Hi, this is Jen Jones, and I'm here today to talk to you about a package called Knitr. And yes, I chose it because I'm a knitter for no other reason than that I was interested in the name. But once I got to looking at it, I got pretty excited about it because R is really cool and you can do lots of really neat stuff with it. But it doesn't really matter what neat stuff you do if you don't have a way to present your results. And Knitr is really good for that. It lets you create PDFs, Word documents, HTML pages. You can do all kinds of really neat stuff with it, and it's pretty easy to use. So I want to show you real quickly some of the simple things you can do, and it lets you embed our code in the document itself so that you can see the code or the results of the code or however you want to do it and produce a really nicely formatted document without a whole lot of effort. So to get started with Knitr, you're going to want to open RStudio, and let's say we're going to go create a new project, and I like to put things in a new directory. So we're going to call this one test 2. And this was the piece that was actually the hardest for me because I was used to just using the little source document and creating script files, and I couldn't figure out how to make this work. But what you have to do is actually create a new file that is an R Markdown file, not a script, not a text file. You want to do this R Markdown. And we can call it Knitr test, and pick the type of format that you want, HTML, PDF, and Word. I will tell you that the PDF documents require that you have an additional piece of software loaded. It's called Pandocs, so you're going to need both the Knitr package and the Pandocs package if you want to do PDFs. I did not have that done when I first created the outline for this course, but I did load it later, and it works really smoothly. It's easy to install. Obviously, if you're going to use Word, you need to have Word on the PC that you're creating this for too. You can also use Markdown files to create presentations. You can use Shiny to do some interactive web stuff, some really, really cool stuff. I don't know a lot about that yet, but that's probably my next adventure. But we're just going to create a new document. And it creates this default information for you. Right here, it's giving you the title, who you are since you installed the software, the date that the document was created, and right now we've got it set to output an HTML document. If you were to create a document from this example, it would go ahead and you could just come up here and you're going to choose knit, and you can knit HTML, PDF, or Word. So I'm going to choose knit HTML, and it's going to ask for a file name that it will create in that new working directory, and we'll just call it test2. And we'll wait a second, and there's our document. And you can see how easily that was created. Anything that you put in as text will show up as text documents over here. Anything that you put in one of these pieces here, this is called an R chunk, and it's 3 little back tick marks and then R in parentheses, and then here's your code, and then you close it with the 3 back tick marks. You can also insert a chunk. If you want to insert an R chunk, you can go here and just say insert chunk, and it'll let you put in a chunk right here of our code. You don't have to do that, but if you're trying to put your code in there, you can. So real simply, if you wanted to knit the HTML, you could do it that way. You can make a Word document. They're going to look a little different, and you'll see Word open up. Here's your Knitr test document. Again, formatting is a little bit different. It's going to use whatever your default Word formatting is, but it's that simple to create a document. So I'm going to close this right now, and I want to show you a really simple example that matches the text that I'm uploading. And you can see exactly how to do headers and block quotes and inserting R code and things like that. So let's open, let's see, this project right here. Okay, so this is the project that I created for this particular video. It's called R Markdown and Knitr. That's our title. This is me here. This is when I did the actual outline for the class. And currently I have it set to output an HTML document. That's very easy to change, and if you change up here what you're trying to create, it will actually change that line in the code as well. So if we changed it to PDF, you'll see that it changes that output and creates the document. And there's our document right there. So let me show you kind of how this works. This heading information up here shows up as headers. That's document title, who created it, and the date that it was created. This is all text documents, right? The text information right here, and you just type it in, type it however you want to. If there's a single space, then our document is not going to have a line break. To create a line break or a new paragraph, you actually have to end the line with 2 spaces. So let's take a look real quick at some of these examples. To create headers, you simply preface whatever your text is with the number of hashtag marks that you want. If you want your first level header, you use 1 hashtag. If you want the second level header, then you use 2 hashtags. So here's an example. This text right here, this is my first header, and this is a level 2 header, creates this part right here. This is my first header and a level 2 header. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Let's look at the next little bit to start a new body paragraph. And take a look at this pretty closely. To start a new body paragraph, you just end a line with 2 spaces. So this line right here actually only has 1 space. You can't see it, but I typed right here that the previous line only has 1 space. This one has 2, so there are 2 spaces right here, and this line will start a new paragraph. So let's look at what it creates in our document. Here's that first line. To start a new body paragraph, you just end a line with 2 spaces. Note, this is where I only had 1 space. So there is no new line break, new paragraph. After that one that said this one has 2, there are actually a line break and it starts a new paragraph. You can insert block syntax if you have a quote that you want to add. This is one of my favorites right here, so I added this one. You just put this little greater than sign before the text that you want to put in. So this right here, this text, if you can't find anything nice to say, you're not trying hard enough, produces something just like this. And this is what it'll look like in a PDF document. I want to show you HTML and Word because they all behave a little bit differently. So let's take a look at the Word doc and what it did there. Okay, note right here, see it changed the formatting, but it didn't actually indent in the Word document. I have not played with it yet. When you get down to doing the lists, the number of spaces actually affects the way that it looks. So you might want to try a couple of extra spaces before you start typing the block quote and see what it does in Word. I haven't tried that. This is what it looks like in HTML. I kind of like this. It gives you the little block quote mark here, and here's the quotation. So I thought that looked pretty good. Other things you can do. You can make lists. Now here I've got 3 hashtag marks, so this means this is a level 3 header, right? To make a list, you put in your asterisks here to start the main list items, and then for items underneath it, you use a plus sign and just start making your list. The lists I found to be a little bit tricky. I had to actually type the 5 spaces before the plus sign to get it to work properly. I couldn't find that anywhere in the docs, but I kept typing just a space with the plus and then the next line, and I was getting just a straight list that wasn't indenting or doing anything like that. So when I used the 5 spaces, that seemed to be the number that I needed. I was able to produce my little grocery list. And this is what it looks like in the PDF document. You can see right here, creates the grocery list, and it actually indents those with the plus. Let's take a look at it in Word. Here's the list in Word, and you can see again this is the 3rd level header, and here's my grocery list, and it did the indents properly. So let's take a look at HTML. I have to say that I actually prefer the way that it automatically formats the HTML documents better than anything else, and I guess that makes sense because most of the people that are producing this are probably producing web presentations. Here's the grocery list in the PDF document. Remember the little 5 spaces, it'll help you. It's not marked anywhere that I could find when I tried to Google it. Another cool thing is you can make tables if you use the pipe symbol, this little guy right here. On mine it's above the backslash on my keyboard, and using dashes. You can use other things like Xtable instead. I haven't tried doing that, but there are packages that actually create tables and probably do it more sophisticated and pretty job of it. Obviously, I have a typo. I'm going to fix that while we're doing this. Um, Creating the tables is really easy. You put your headings here with the pipe symbol between them, and then you put in your rows so you can see where the tables fit. And you don't even have to line the columns up. I thought this was kind of neat. We're going to take a look at this. Here's the pipe symbol between my two columns, and note that my columns don't line up. But if you take this whole thing as the table that I want to insert, this is what it looks like in the HTML document right here. It's smart enough to make it into columns and fit it into the right tables and line everything up, even though my text itself doesn't line up. So pretty cool. That's the HTML version. Here we go. Here's the PDF version. It centers it. I don't know what logic it uses to do all that. Knitr has a lot of stuff that I didn't have time to reference yet, so I'm sure that there is more that you can do to change the presentation of some things, but um, it's pretty easy, and what it creates to start with is pretty clean and easy to work with. So let's take a look at inserting R chunks, because that's where the real power comes in. When you're working with R, you can actually build your whole project into the document itself. For the example that I wanted to do, I used a data set that's already loaded when you install R, and that data set is called MT cars, motor cars. So we'll use that to illustrate some of the code. One of the first things I wanted to do was figure out what was in the data set. So I inserted an R chunk. Remember again, that's the three little back ticks right here with the parentheses and a lowercase r, and close your parentheses. And then I just inserted some R commands. Here I wanted to do the head command, and let's take a look at what that did. And it will actually return the R command itself along with the results, so you can see what produced those results. So here you can see head, just like I had typed in for the motor cars data set, and then here are the results of the head command. And it shows you the first few rows of that data set. And I thought, yeah, well, that's cool, but I want to see a little bit more information. So I used the summary command over here. And again, it's going to return all of the information, and the way I have it set right now, it's actually going to return the R command as well. So again, I like the HTML. I really like the way it looks. It's nice and clean. So let's take a look at that. Here we go. We have the summary motor cars, and then here is all the data that returned. So you can see I also have mean, median, and actually sorted the motor car data set in order of miles per gallon decreasing. So that's what this command right here does. And again, the R command is just the way that you would put it in your R script file, and it will produce the results. To close that code chunk, you just put the three backticks again. So let's take a look at that. So there you go. There's all the results of that command. The next thing I did was type in some more text that I wanted to include, and you have to remember to put 2 spaces at the end of each of those lines that you want as you want a new line to start. So this example right here does have 2 spaces at the end of the line. Then I decided I'd put in a plot so you could see how nicely Knitr handles the plots as well. I used ggplot, so I had to load ggplot2. And then here's what we're trying to create. We tried to create a scatter plot with some labels and tried to nudge the labels kind of out of the way so we could see what was going on. The key to this one that I wanted you to see is when I see the plot, I don't really care about the R code, I just want to see it. So the important part here, when you put in your R command, you put in your chunk, if you say echo equals false, then you're not going to get the commands themselves echoed to the document. You're only going to get the results. So let's take a look at what that ended up looking like. Here you can see we've got that you can embed plots text, but we don't have the R command that created the chart. We just have the plot itself. So that echo equals false can be really handy unless you really need to show the R code itself. If you just want the results sent to the document, use the echo equals false command. So I think that'll get you started. Some other cool things that you can do. I put a list in here of some things that I had found. You need to be sure that you load the R Markdown package, and then when you're creating a new document, you want to select File, New File, R Markdown. You can do presentations. We actually have um, a psychology professor here who does everything in R, including all of his presentations. He doesn't use PowerPoint or anything. He does everything in R. He's a big baseball fan, so he's also one of my heroes. So once you've got your code written and your text input, then you can knit. Like I said, either of those three files. You can use a Word doc, a PDF, or an HTML file. I think I'm partial to the HTML formatting, but it depends on what you're trying to do with it. To do the PDF, remember that you will have to use Pandocs, this little Pandocs package that you'll also have to load to produce PDFs. And it works with, I think, something that's called LaTeX or something like that too. I don't know how all that runs behind the scenes. That was a little beyond this particular presentation. One of the other cool things I put in here so that when I upload these docs is you can actually build links into your documents as well. So here is our Markdown version 2. This is the documentation page for it, and I use that pretty heavily. Markdown is cool once you start messing around with it, and it works with Knitr, so I had to actually use this web page to build this as well. And then ggplot, there's some pretty good documentation here for it, and that's how I figured out how to do the motor cars chart that I put in this page. And then someday when I get really good at this, and you guys probably remember reading about Tufte and his work on visual presentation. There's actually a Tufte handouts package that works with R Markdown that uses the formatting and the fonts and the label types and everything that he recommends are best for when you're presenting information visually. I thought that was a pretty cool package. I haven't messed around with it yet. Maybe I'll do another video if I mess around with it. Let's take a look real quick at those last little bits so you can see the links that are built into the documents. And here you can see the HTML file. Right down here, you can see the link was created, that R Markdown v2. And if we click it, we will go directly to that page. It works pretty well. And it's not hard to include the information. You just put the link itself. You put the text for the link in square brackets, and then you put the link in parentheses behind it. It works pretty easily. And here's the ggplot page. And it had, I thought, really easy information to follow and a good reference library for you to use if you're doing ggplot, which is a pretty cool plotting package. And then here's Tufte handouts, which I'll aspire to it someday. So when you produced a Tufte handout document, it would look like this right here, which is pretty cool, but I'm not smart enough to do that yet. So I hope that helped you. Like I said, I chose Knitr on a whim just because I'm a knitter and I thought it'd be fun to choose something with that kind of name. I think it's an incredibly useful package though, because when you've done a lot of hard work in R, you're going to want to show it to somebody, and this is the way that you do it. It's real handy, works really well. Thanks for your attention.